We're responding again. Doesn't matter. Is it going to be a flood? And we've got to make sure we're secure. We've got to make sure that the water's not getting into the building. If it got into the building, how do we get it out of the building and make sure we don't get mold or anything from it being damp? When it's a tornado, does the roof blow off? All of those things.
Clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now, it's time to roll back and start the first case.
On this week's episode of First Case, we are talking about the facilities department and looking at all of the jobs that facilities is doing within our hospitals to keep our environment safe, to keep our surgeries going, from air conditioning to plumbing to power to the walls and the floors and everything in between. Facilities is handling all of that so that we can show up, come to the OR, do the surgeries, get our patients safely home, and do it all again time after time. And I think sometimes we actually forget that facilities is there unless something goes wrong. And so today we are going to be speaking with a facilities consultant named Kathy Neal. She's got 40 years of experience in facilities, and she's got a lot to share with us today. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back with Kathy Neal.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to First Case.
Joining us now is Kathy Neal, a facilities consultant with 40 years of experience from South Carolina. And Kathy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a great conversation. And we were talking before we started recording. And for all of you listening, as I was putting this season together, I was going through all the different departments that, the OR interacts with and all the people that we talk to. And if any of you listening remember from our early seasons when Justin Poulin was our co-host, I was talking to Justin and he was like, "Oh, you've got to talk to somebody from facilities." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, facilities. I forgot about facilities." And I think a lot of us forget about facilities. So this is a very appropriate conversation to be having. So as we dive into this episode to really understand the role of facilities and how you make sure that surgeries can happen, Kathy, you've got all the experience to share with us today. So before we get into that, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself to our audience?
Okay. Good morning. My name is Kathy Neal, and I currently live in Margaritaville in South Carolina. I have about 40 years of experience in the facilities world, about 25 with Aramark and actually working in facilities. And then I moved over to MedExcel and worked in regulatory as it relates to facilities.
So you got all the experience from the in-hospital side to the regulatory side. And I mean, I'm just thinking from the regulatory side of nursing with Joint Commission, I can't imagine what it's like on the facility side with regulatory. I mean, what a headache.
They keep us hopping, I will say, because every time you turn around, they throw something new at you.
Yeah, that's how I feel the same way. I mean, just like, oh, this is new. Oh, we're doing this now. Okay. So yeah, I can feel your pain, even though I'm sure that our regulations, while connected, we see a little bit different. But so when we think about facilities then, and we think about this department, which this might be the first time that some people are even hearing about a department called facilities, what is it that the facilities department is doing?
So what I kind of tell people is facilities is like the human body when I'm explaining it to clinical, is The skin is the outer shell, so that's your building, and then you've got all of the pipes running through, and again, that's all of your blood vessels and stuff. And so they're keeping the building running. They're keeping it hot. They're keeping it cool. We always say in facilities that no one ever calls up and says, I just want to tell you, I came in this morning and my lights came on and the temperature was just right.
Nobody ever cares until it's wrong, right?
You're right.
So I told my son the exact same thing one time. He's currently in the ROTC program in college, and he's actually their supply officer for the command. And it's supply, right? It's the people who provide the things. Nobody ever says, thank you that my stuff is here, but they sure do yell as soon as the stuff isn't there or they don't have exactly what they need. And I think it's just naturally human nature to be like, take it for granted that it's working, that it's here, like in facilities case, that the air conditioning is on or that the heat is running or that the humidity is right or all of these things. And we don't ever actually pay attention until something's off, and then we start howling. My son is painfully learning this lesson as he navigates the adult world. But so when we think about that then, and we think about all of the things that facilities is doing, what is it? I mean, yes, we're keeping the whole building running, but let's bring that down to the operating room. How are y'all interacting with the operating room and keeping us able to do what we do?
Well, one of the things is the Joint Commission puts some very tight parameters on what temperatures and humidities we can have in the operating rooms. And that's to keep people safe. It isn't to make people miserable. It's to keep people safe. But one of the things that we find is our doctors or our physicians want the temperature much lower than Joint Commission tells you can have it for.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's always that back and forth. Give it to me or else. And facilities is like, we'd love to give it to you, but. And so that's one of the things that I think happens is they don't sit down and have that conversation of, this is the reason why I need the temperature dropped. And facilities to say, either I can give it to you or I can't give it to you. The building may not be able to give it to you at all.
Yeah. So actually, speaking of temperatures, I know the facility that I worked in, if we weren't careful, if we lowered the temperature in the room too much, it would actually affect the HVAC system and could actually trigger like the heater to come on or some other things that it could mess everything up. Have you seen that happen before?
Yeah. What happens is that temperature and humidity are inversely proportional. And so when you lower the temperature, the humidity goes up. And so as they turn these heaters, they're turning humidifiers on as they drop that temperature and the humidity goes up. Which again is another parameter that Joint Commission and infection control says you can't be above. And that's for infection control reasons. And so what we say is above 60, things start to get damp. Supplies get damp, walls get damp. And again, that will breed things.
Yeah. And you think about that moisture, if it's sitting on something on instrument trays, all of a sudden that moisture is could be transferring pathogens from the outside to the inside of a tray or through your blue wrap or any number of things. And so, yeah, we don't like it when we see moisture, and we certainly don't want to be working in a swampy environment anyway. So we don't want we don't want the humidity to get above the range for sure. But are there also issues if the humidity gets too low?
If it gets too low, it's also an infection control issue. And then it also becomes a sparking issue.
Really?
In the wintertime, especially if you live up north and it's cold, the air is cold and dry and you go and touch something and you get shock. Mm-hmm. So again, we don't want that in the OR either.
No, we don't need any sparks. We try real hard to avoid any sparks whatsoever. We don't need to make it worse with the lower humidity. Okay, so beyond HVAC systems, obviously, I think we can all agree that we understand, the temperature controls and temperature and humidity. But there's other stuff y'all are doing too, besides just temperature and humidity. What are some of the other things that you're looking at?
So one of the other things that we look at is the pressure relationship. Because again, we want our operating room to be the cleanest space in the hospital. And so the air has got to go from the operating room out into the corridor. You never want the air to come from the corridor into the OR because we don't want to introduce anything doesn't belong there.
Right. Yeah. We don't want the air from the hallway being sucked into the room and then blowing over a patient's open wound. Yeah, that would be bad. Unless we actually need a negative pressure room for a certain reason, in which case all that stuff gets flipped on its head. But in general, yes, our rooms are positive pressures. Now, one thing that I learned years ago when I was managing an OR, and I don't know if you've ever done this before. I'm sure you have, because I saw this from somebody who had been doing facilities for a long time. But they were going around just making sure that the pressure is in the room. And yes, you have the little pressure things outside the rooms where you can see if the pressure is right or wrong. But he was actually taking a piece of paper and he would just put a piece of paper down at the bottom of the door. And if it blew out, then you knew that your pressure was correct and it was the positive pressure it needed to be, or on the negative pressure room, it would suck the little piece of paper into the room. Have you ever done something like that before?
We did. That Joint Commission used to do that for years. And we used to always have a joke that you used toilet paper and you had to get it from the facility so it was acclimated to the facility, which is not true. But we just, would say that. And we were like in single ply. And so again,
it's got to be
we had always rules around the toilet paper.
I think we just like to make rules for the sake of making rules. Okay, so we've got our positive pressure and negative pressure rooms, our temperature and humidity, but y'all are also dealing with all of our electrical systems too, right?
We are, again, making sure that you've got enough emergency power if the lights go out. All of the ORs have a battery powered light in them. It's called task light. And so that's, again, when the power goes out, you're going to have a certain amount of time, ideally less than 10 seconds, before emergency power kicks in. 10 seconds is a long time when you're in the dark.
Yes, it is. I've had it happen. And I actually, this happened. I was doing a mission trip in Honduras. And it was kind of common for the power to cycle at times. And when they told us ahead of time it could happen, and they did have generator backup, but that 7-8 seconds of waiting and you're just like, my gosh. So yes, it is. I mean, and I've had it happen during, thunderstorms and things too. I live in the South and, the South just loves to have tornadoes on a regular basis. And so severe weather has knocked the power out too, but you're not kidding. That wait for the generator to come on it's intense. It's short, but it feels like an eternity.
Yeah. And so that's why areas like the ORs have what's called task lighting. And again, it's battery lighting and it's going to hold you over. It's going to allow you to make sure that everything is safe where you are at with the procedure until you get that emergency power back. And then you can figure out what your next steps are.
Man. Okay, so y'all really are definitely overseeing, I think, a lot more than people really, I think, fully appreciate, that it's all facilities that is handling all of these things. But what about, I know we talked about HVAC and stuff, but also air exchanges, because air exchange and all of those things are just as important part of our OR environment. Is that something you're also monitoring with our ORs?
We are. And then once a year, we actually usually have a company come in and do all of the testing, reset all the rooms, because during the year, when you're trying to make everybody happy and you're dropping the temperature, and when you add more cold air to drop the temperature, you're messing with the pressure relationship, which ties into the air exchange. And so once a year you go through and you're like, that's it. Let's rebalance everybody and get them back to where they should be.
Interesting. Okay. I didn't realize that was something that had to be tweaked every year. I thought it was just a setting within the HVAC system.
One of the things that happens is HVAC systems age, just like you or I. And again, as the building gets older, the equipment gets slower. And when you start pushing it, you're like, but I need 62 degrees, not 68 degrees. And it's going, I'm giving you everything that I've got.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking to the cases I was in last week and the number of times I turned the air down and turned it down some more and turned it down some more. We actually have, this might make you cringe, but one way to trick our thermostat into thinking it's warm in the room to get it to come on so that it would actually cool the room down faster is to take a warm blanket out of the warmer and drape it over the thermostat so that it could then make the room get cooler. I'm guessing that's really not a good thing to do, and we should not be doing that, right?
It's not really a good thing. But again, Joint Commission lets us drop the temperature. We can drop it down as far as the system allows you to do it. But after surgery, you've just got to bring it back up.
Yeah, that's what we see. Is you can lower it for the surgeon's comfort if you're monitoring the patient for normothermia and all of these things. But yeah, it's got to come back up after the case is over. But man, sensitivity to the temperature is a big one for sure. Okay, so beyond all of these things we've already talked about, it's but wait, there's more, right? Y'all are also handling, I think, our sterilizers, if something is an issue with that, or the plumbing system and the things coming in through the water lines, or even like the building's integrity itself. So what else? Let's just keep pulling out of Pandora's box here. What else are y'all doing?
Again, as you said, the plumbing, before you go into OR, you stop at the scrub sinks. And so, the water that comes out of the scrub sinks, you want to make sure, again, that, everything is working, all the pressures are right, that when you push the pedal on the scrub sink, if you don't have the hands free, then, you push the pedal and you can, the water
and
comes
the water
out.
Actually comes out. Yeah.
And then when you talk about the water, you're looking at Legionella. And again, making sure you're treating all of the water that comes into the building. You're testing all the water that comes into the building. That's a big thing with Joint Commission.
Yeah.
Again, to make sure that everything's safe.
And so it's really not just, yes, it's coming into the facility as just your city tap water, whatever. But by the time it's making it to the scrub sink, is it still just the same city water? Or has it gone through any filters, or has it had anything else happen to it? Has it been, because you're testing it to make sure that it meets all those standards. So, because I've always wondered, here we go, we go make sure we're all sterile, but we've washed our hands in the tap water, and in the water before we go to surgery. But that might not be the case. The water has been addressed, I guess, before it gets to us. Is that right?
Yeah. You test it when it comes into the facility.
Uh-huh.
And then depending on what you're getting from the city is you could be providing some additional treatment.
Got it. And obviously the water going into sterile processing and the water that's in our steam sterilizers and that's in our that water is super special water.
Yes.
That's on its own level of monitoring, just because it has to meet so many more standards just for the sake of having sterile instruments, right?
Well, and to protect the equipment, the sterilizing equipment is very sensitive. And again, so if the water isn't conditioned to go into those sterilizers, right, then you're going to damage the sterilizers.
Okay, so I feel like I just keep pulling more systems from the hospital out of the hat, and it's like, oh yeah, we do that too. Oh yeah, we do that too. So what else? Is there anything else that we haven't hit on that facilities is also paying attention to?
Everything from the flooring, again, the walls, you want to make sure there's no chips in the walls, that the floors don't have any cracks where germs can hide.
Yeah.
It doesn't, so then it's not a cleanable surface. All of the doors as you walk through, the door openers, do they open the doors with, all the hinges, do they close? Have the doors been hit a bunch of the times by a portable x-ray machine? And so now they don't quite line up. And again, because a hospital is defend in place, which means if the fire alarm goes off, everybody just doesn't run out the door. They're designed to defend in place, which is why you want the doors to be able to close and be tight. Yeah. So there's always an inspection of the doors going around.
Okay, so you actually bring up another point that I didn't think about, but yeah, fire safety and evacuation safety, any type of disaster at all. That's something that's within your realm too, that y'all are also overseeing, right?
Yeah, we're responding again. It doesn't matter, is it going to be a flood? And we've got to make sure we're secure. We've got to make sure that the water's not getting into the building. If it got into the building, how do we get it out of the building and make sure we don't get mold or anything from it being damp? When it's a tornado, does the roof blow off? All of those things.
Yeah. And, you and I both are in the South where tornadoes are a very real problem, but so are hurricanes.
Yeah.
And then hurricanes with the flooding and with the subsequent tornadoes, potentially with the power outages and all of the just affiliated damage. Facilities has their work cut out for them, don't they?
Most of them have a cot hidden somewhere.
You're not leaving.
Because all of those things, again, hurricanes, tornadoes up north, it's, snow.
Snow and blizzards, yeah.
And so I had a cot. I've got my own pillow,
Yeah, well, you'd kind of have to, because I don't see how, I really feel like it's like if there's something serious going on, facilities just has to be there, right? Y'all are just there to make sure to, I guess maybe you can't protect the building necessarily from, a weather event or something like that, but you can be there to oversee to make sure that no further damage is done, I guess, or that you immediately begin the cleanup process, right?
Right. Well, and you're doing a lot of prep before. If it's something that you know is coming, like a hurricane, you're putting the sandbags out, you're getting the building prepped, ready to go, and then getting in backup generators, getting all of that stuff in, coordinating that type of stuff, getting it into the building. If it's afterwards, you might be out there with landscaping, cutting down trees to make sure there's a path for supplies to get in.
Okay, y'all are busy. Y'all do. When I scheduled this interview, I mean, I've interacted with our facilities department multiple times, and I at least empirically know that there's a lot that y'all do. But actually sitting here listening to it, I'm like, man, that makes me tired when I think about everything that because it almost seems. It's like, in one sense, I can see, okay, facility, what was within the facility, so you are overseeing it. But at the same time, things feel very disconnected. Like you're playing with you're paying attention to the air conditioner, but you're also responsible for, the sandbags if there's a flood, or, draining water, or, the pipes burst over somewhere in the hospital and you've got to go deal with the burst pipe and the subsequent cleanup. I know it all goes together, but it seems like that's got to be a really big department to be able to support a big facility. So when we think about all that you're doing, and obviously the OR is stringent, we have rules we have to follow, either the operating room or sterile processing. I think both of them can be included in this conversation because of the level of interaction they have and the requirements that have to be met for them. Can you give me an example maybe, or kind of talk about what it's like when something goes wrong in one of those departments and then the director, the manager, charge nurse, somebody is frantically calling you, screaming like, fix it now. How are those situations handled?
Sometimes they're handled really well. Sometimes you're just like, I don't know what you want me to do. And, we had talked a little bit before, and, I said one of the big things is we've got to listen to each other, because, again, there's a critical need that has to happen. I can't do surgery today if we don't get this fixed. And facilities is going, I'm doing the best that I can. But I think if they gave a little more information, this is why, and this is how long it's going to take. We also always get that phone call when the power goes out. When's the power coming back on?
Well, let me put on my genie hat and consult my crystal ball, and I will let you know. Yeah.
But again, I think there are times that if both sides listen to, this is what my equipment can give you, but it's going to take this much time. We never want to cancel cases either. We always tell people that facilities doesn't cancel cases. We tell you the environment we can give you.
Unless you make that decision.
We go from there. And then again, looping in infection control, because if we say we're going to be dropping the temperature, what's the humidity look like? Infection control may say, okay, I'm good with that for 2 hours. I'm good with that for 4 hours. But how do we make this work with everybody thinking like patient safety is the bottom line?
Absolutely. And I think you do bring up a really good point about the importance of communication. I think there's a level of managing expectations on both sides, but when it comes to those of us in the OR calling facilities because the humidity is too high, or, one of the air handlers has gone down, or I don't know, there's a burst pipe. One, I think, yes, we're stressed and we're panicked about it, but the person on the other end of the phone didn't cause the problem. And I think a lot of times our stress comes out in, biting the head off of the person we're talking to, which is never good and never okay. But we do know what happens. But then also they'll, on our side, giving all of the information. Here's all of the details. Here's everything that happened. Here's where we are, where we're at. And then the flip side, on the facility side, like you said, well, not just, I can't do anything about that, or, it's going to be 10 hours. How about, the full, as best they can, here's why, here's what's going on, here's an update. And I think all of us at work, or just in our lives in general, we all do better when we kind of have that why, when we have or at least we've got a fuller picture than just the short answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the updates, like you said, I think those are so important, because again, not it'll be fixed when it gets fixed, but what does that mean in the real world?
Right. Yeah, nope, I get it. So then if there's something going on in the OR then, and we have obviously different levels of request, right? We have the critical, this is emergent, has to be dealt with now. We have something urgent that needs to be addressed, but doesn't necessarily you need to drop everything and come running. And then we have just standard things that need to be done. How should those, what's the best way, I guess, to say it this way? What's the best way for those different types of requests to be communicated to the facilities department to have that best working relationship?
I think part of it is there's most facilities have a work order system. So for all of those non-emergent requests, can you hang a bulletin board? Can you fix my soap dispenser? Put those in the work order system. They'll get prioritized with the rest of the stuff in the hospital, and then, they'll come up and do them. A lot of times for the emergent things, you have to make a phone call and then again get two people talking and get the right people talking to each other.
So then what do you think are obstacles to that communication? We've hit on them a little bit, but are there other things that just get in the way from us being able to communicate between our departments?
I think a lot of it is that, again, you don't really take the time on either side to sit down and say, what's the best way, like you just said, what's the best way to communicate? I've seen facilities who do a doc preference card, and that says when Dr. Bones is doing a hip, he wants the temperature at 62. And they keep a little card file, or it might be an e-file.
Yeah.
Tell my age, a little card file. That
little
metal box
with the card files. I know all about the cards.
But because Joint Commission is going to ask you, why are you dropping the temperature? And you go, every time Dr. Bones is here, we're going to drop it to 62. And so facilities knows, they've got the OR schedule, and they know that on Tuesday, they've got to drop the temperature to 62, and he's going to be here all day, in OR 6. So again, I think there's some pre-planning that can happen versus, he just walked in the door. Most surgeries, except for, emergencies, are planned. So how can we work together? And then also take in, if facility says there's no way we can give you 62 on Tuesday, you know that ahead of time.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, we can give you 64 or whatever is happening outside. It's the warmest summer we've ever had.
And that really does affect things too. And I don't think people realize that just because you have an air conditioning system doesn't mean it can keep working to full potential when it's 110 degrees outside. I think people forget that it's doing its best it can.
Yeah.
It's doing the best
designed
it can,
for average temperature. Same thing for your home one. They're designed for average temperature. And when we have the hottest day or the coldest day of the year, when Joint Commission comes in, they'll say, give me a February and an August. And we want to see those records.
I can see that. Too, we also ran into some issues. It really threw me because I get the super hot days, the super, super cold days. Those are, out of the average, out of the normal. But in Alabama, it's humid. We have such high humidity so often. And then super rainy, super humid days. Sometimes our HVAC systems they were older and so they needed to be addressed anyway. But those super rainy, super humid days would really mess up our systems. And we would have problems in a few of our ORs with the temperature and humidity just because it was so humid outside. And that one threw me. I didn't expect that to be an issue, but it did.
Yeah. And I don't think people realize what it takes to get a new air conditioner. Because again, they don't magically appear. And it isn't just, money, but also the downtime, that you've got to have, we've got to shut the OR down for this much time, or we've got to move where the OR is for this much time. And then we've physically got to get this giant piece of equipment, get the old one out, get the new one in. And so
it's not home sized. This is industrial sized air conditioner. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We actually ended up doing that at this facility that I'm talking about that had the issues. They ended up replacing because it was 3 ORs it was only those 3. They were on a separate system and that system was just not keeping up. And they ended up, they had to be shut down, done over a weekend. This whole ordeal really, because it brings everything to a halt trying to get work like that done. Okay. Then that actually brings up another question then. So what about other things like work that's got to be done in the OR. Maybe the walls need to be painted, or the floor needs to be fixed of gouges, or you've got to strip and wax the floors. I mean, I think all of that falls into facilities, right?
Yeah, it all does. Yeah.
How do y'all make sure that stuff happens in a way that doesn't interfere or communicate when it's going to?
Part of it is the pre-planning. And again, working with infection control, I'm doing a risk assessment of when we do this, when we open the ceiling to put in new surgical lights.
Yeah.
What's going to come down?
Gross.
So how do we make sure that whatever comes down isn't going out in the hallway? Because again, it's normally a positive room. So now we're going to have to make it a negative room. So everything that we do in that room stays in that room.
Yeah. Okay. So then how long is it before, like, if you make it negative, you do all the work and then it all gets terminally cleaned, I guess, right? And then you have to switch it back to being positive. Does it just go right back, or does it have to sit for a while before you can use that room again?
Most of the time you're making it negative by bringing in a HEPA machine. You're bringing in a machine to make it negative. So you're not really affecting
the whole system,
the system itself that's serving the room. But again, you've got to go through, you get all your work done, and then you've got to get, EVS in there to do a full terminal clean, and then get infection control to bless it and say, hey, you're good to go again.
Yeah, the Pope of the hospital comes and blesses the room. And yes, you can use this again. I don't mean any offense to anyone listening who is Catholic. I just, I feel that you're right. They do. They come bless things so that you can use it again or not. And they do have a lot of control in that regard. So I guess I could ask you questions all day because I'm like, wow, I'm just like, okay, y'all do a lot. And we're coming to the end of this conversation. And the whole theme of this season has been collaboration. And the goal really from the OR side of it is to see all of the different departments that really do work in tandem with us so that we can pull off a successful surgery. And when you think about it, every single surgery is dependent on, like you said, infection prevention, or on facilities, or like we've talked about already, radiology and supply chain and pharmacy. Like all of these departments within the hospital make the surgeries happen. It's not just here in the OR. So I'm curious if you have any other just final thoughts, any things you want to share with our audience about that collaboration between facilities and the OR. What advice would you share?
One of the things that I used to do when I was a facility director was we would do it during National Hospital Engineering Week, is we would invite the clinical teams up to look at the power plant or come up and look at the chiller, to see how we make air conditioning. Because again, they just know that it appears.
Right.
And because the bottom line with facilities is we always say we never want to have the environment make people any sicker.
Yeah.
People are coming into our hospital sick.
They don't want to get sicker while they're here.
Yeah. And so we want to make sure that the environment that they're in, whether it's the air, the electricity, the water, doesn't make them any sicker. So if you talk to facilities staff in the hospitals, they're going to tell you that they do this because they like it. They love it. They will tell you they're there to take care of their patients. And, they've got the biggest hearts.
Oh, no, I've always had fantastic interactions with all of our facilities people. I completely agree. And they're quick to help and quick to come, make sure that we can keep things running. So you're right. They're a good group of people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has definitely been an educational episode for me, and hopefully for everyone listening as well. They've taken away a little bit more of a nugget of what it is that facilities does. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That was Kathy Neal, a very experienced facilities consultant from South Carolina. And I was really surprised to just sit and listen to everything that facilities does. I know by the name facilities, you can think, oh yeah, duh, they just handle the facility. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, so to speak, all the fine details of what they're doing, they are really juggling a lot of our surgical environment, our hospital environment, the water, the electricity, the air system, all of this is within their oversight. And this is definitely a department that we work very closely with and we are dependent upon to make sure that our environment of care is safe for our patients. So I think Kathy really helped us just see more about what they do, and I hope gave us a bigger perspective of all of the work that goes into making the environment safe for surgical care for our patients. That is going to do it for this week's interview. On behalf of Chris, myself, and our whole team, thanks for listening to this week's episode of First Case.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of First Case. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to First Case on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for First Case in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@firstcasemedia.com. We look forward to hearing from you.